The Jimmy Dore Show is available as a podcast for free on iTunes. Or for other ways to subscribe, go to jimmydorecomedy.com. And while you're there, you can listen to past episodes and you can comment on them too. Remember, Jimmy spells his last name Dore. jimmydorecomedy.com.
So Chuck Todd also interviewed Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. So here's the first question. I'm just going to remind you, here's the first question he asked Donald Trump. I'm going to play it again.
When you, from conservatives, you're not a real conservative. When you hear that, someone will argue on social policies that you're not a real conservative. Is it just different brands of conservatism that's out there and you just have a different brand, or do you think they have a point?
So again, that's his first, like, hey, you're just a different he's explaining to people what kind of conservatives there are, and Donald's okay. Here's his first question to Bernie Sanders. Ready? This is a guy who's been a senator for how many years? He's been in politics, a serious person. He's been a trailblazer, an independent. He's worked for, so this guy's a serious, real deal guy. Mm-hmm. Ready?
I have to say, I was both in Clear Lake, watched you in the soapbox yesterday where you had so many people. The fair stopped. Forget Trump, forget Hillary Clinton. I think you might have had the biggest crowd yesterday.
So he says that, and I played that 5 times, and then the 5th time I noticed that he giggled through that. Like, hey, he's like, hey, you might have had that. Isn't that crazy? That's stupid. This guy, you had a bigger crowd. You hit that Donald Trump. Isn't that nuts?
Very patronizing.
Isn't that? I think you might have had the biggest crowd. Is that something? Why would a guy who's been a senator and outspoken on issues, talking about substance and really striking a chord with people, getting crowds nobody has seen anything close to since Barack Obama, before or since? Why would that's so stupid? So here's this. That's literally how he introduced. So I'm not reading into this, by the way. I'm thought about it. I'm like, come on, no. That's, what else do you think is the emotion behind what he just said? That I think you might have had the biggest crowd. Forget about Donald Trump. Oh, no. We should have forgot about Donald Trump a long time ago, Chuck. But guys like you don't confront him with stats and facts, and you guys keep covering him.
You almost thought Chuck Todd was going to go, and good for you.
Yeah, good for you, little Bernie.
You did really good. Great. You did great. I'm going to give you a gold star.
Yes. It was very patronizing.
The press has decided long ago Hillary is the nominee.
Yes.
Which they shouldn't have.
Right.
And they are looking at Bernie Sanders like he's some sideshow.
Yes.
When he's actually saying things of substance. And when people compare Trump to Bernie Sanders, it's infuriating because Bernie Sanders is getting ahead because he's saying things of substance that make logical sense.
He's resonating with people.
He's appealing to people with logic and facts. And Donald Trump is appealing to people into their darkest sides. He's appealing to their fear, their misogyny, their racism, their xenophobia, their militarism, their hatred of the other. That is what he's tapping into. He's tapping into the dark side of people. Bernie Sanders is tapping into their light, to their aspirations, to their hope. So here it is again. I'm going to play the whole question. Here's the first question Chuck Todd has for Bernie Sanders.
I have to say, I was both in Clear Lake, watched you in the soapbox yesterday where you had so many people. The fair stopped. Forget Trump, forget Hillary Clinton. I think you might have had the biggest crowd yesterday. Why do you think you're resonating at this point, and how do you take this from being a movement that seems big in August, and how do you keep it from fading 5 months from now?
Hey, how do you not become a failure? That's my first question to you. Hey, you're kicking ass, you're connecting with people, you're getting bigger crowds than Hillary Clinton can ever hope for. How do you not fail going forward? Hey, by the way, how do you make it so you don't molest kids, too, on the campaign trail? And do you have a plan in place to make sure you don't beat your wife? These are the questions I'm asking. That's my first question out of the box. Hey, how do you make sure you're not a failure? After he just said he got the biggest crowd at the Iowa State Fair, he's been getting the biggest crowds everywhere, dwarfing everyone else.
Well, and they say about Trump, they're all like, oh, he's a straight shooter. He says what he thinks. But you know what? That's true of Bernie Sanders to a much greater degree.
Right.
You know? But and it's when they're like just assuming that Hillary is going to be the nominee, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because they don't treat what is happening with Bernie Sanders, they don't treat it as a big news story. They don't, the fact that Bernie Sanders brings in huge crowds and then says these things which are having an effect on people, which people are responding to. They don't lead the news with that story.
No,
and,
they lead.
And that's all just an editorial decision.
So this is
that
what
could easily be the lead story on a newscast. And they treat Bernie as just a sideshow, and Trump is the main event.
Well, you're getting out a little bit out in front of this segment because I'm going to show you examples of what you just said, right? So here's Bernie's response to that stupid question: How are you gonna not fade?
Well, Chuck, I think we are resonating all over this country and here in Iowa because we're talking about issues that are life and death issues to the American people. And that is the collapse of the American middle class, the massive and grotesque level of income and wealth inequality in this country, the fact that we are the only major country on earth that doesn't guarantee health care to all people, the fact that millions of working class families are now finding it very, very difficult to send their kids to college, and the basic fact that people are working longer hours for lower wages, and meanwhile almost all of the new income and wealth is going to the top 1%. And then you add to that a campaign finance system as a result of Citizens United that allows billionaire families like the Koch brothers and others to literally buy politicians and corrupt the American political process.
Senator,
add all of that together, and the American people are saying enough is enough.
So he took that bogus question and he turned it into something, and he jammed as many facts and substance argument and policy ideas into that answer as he could. And Chuck Todd still couldn't wait to cut him off. Here he is. He's a gift the journalists always say they want. Why can't we have a guy who comes on and doesn't spin, who talks straight, and he wants to talk about substance, and he wants to talk about ideas, and he's got bold ideas, and he connects with people. Where are those people? Well, here's a guy sitting in front of him, and all Chuck Todd wants to do is ask him about the horse race. That's all he wants to do is ask him about the horse race, and Bernie Sanders turns it into substance, and he tries to interrupt him when he's talking about substance. And here, what did he want to interrupt him for? Here's what he wanted to interrupt him for. Listen to this.
To literally
Chuck wants to interrupt him here.
And corrupt the American political process.
Senator,
add all of that together, and the American people are saying enough is enough.
The last time I had you on, and I asked you about what do you think of the comparisons between the phenomenon of what's happening with you and whether there were similarities with Trump, you were dismissive of it. But can I tell you, I can't tell you how many people came up to me and said both positive things about you and Trump at the same time, using things like the campaign money example and the outsider. What do you think you have in common with the Trump voter? Forget Trump, but the Trump voter.
So the first question is how come
it's another big advertisement for Trump.
He says the first question is how come how are you going to stop being a failure? And the second question is the only question he could think to ask was about Donald Trump. Chuck Todd asked the Democratic Socialist from Vermont, how is he similar to a billionaire television celebrity?
You know what? They do have one thing in common, though, and this is seriously. They both speak bluntly. So like Trump says things that are inarticulate and racist, but Bernie Sanders says things that are very articulate and eloquent and thought out.
Yeah, yes, and so did Andy Rooney and Mike Tyson. They both spoke very plainly. Regular Joes.
By the way, it's not Bernie Sanders' job to know any of what Chuck Todd asked him. It's
Robert,
Chuck Todd's job to know that.
What?
Like
what's the appeal?
What? Right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
It's not his job. I mean, Bernie Sanders is a senator, and he's a candidate. He's like that. Those are his jobs. It's not his job to know what chord he's striking. That's the same with Trump.
So that was the second question.
Dumb question.
The third question. Here's the third question he asks him. Again, Bernie keeps trying to talk about substance issues, the things that people want to talk about to change their lives, actually. And all he wants to talk about is Donald Trump and the horse race and why are you a failure. Here's his third question. He asked him about Black Lives Matter.
BuzzFeed has an article out this morning. Headline is this: Sanders campaign reaches out to Black Lives Matter activists. Quote, I apologize. It took our campaign so long. Tell me more about it.
Well, that was sent out by a staffer, not by me. But on this issue of Black Lives Matter, let me be very clear.
So again, he takes this question from Chuck Todd. Hey, you send an apology to Black Lives? Not like, hey, what's the issues that surround the black? Not what's the, just about, hey, did you? And so here, Bernie Sanders again starts to talk about.
By the way, can I just quickly point out that Chuck Todd never issued an apology for showing that video of all the black shooters right after the Charleston shooting.
Right.
He never publicly apologized for that.
Never. No. So he said it. No, in fact, he said it's good when we make people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Except for our guests, who we're supposed to make uncomfortable.
But the point is, Chuck Todd is asking about the messaging and not the substance.
That's the point I'm making. He's talking all about the horse race and nothing about substance.
The issue that they are raising is a very, very important issue. And there is no candidate for president who will be stronger in fighting against institutional racism and, by the way, reforming a broken criminal justice system.
So even with that, he's not done, by the way. Look at all that substance he put in there. There's more coming.
Chuck, we have more people in jail in the United States of America than any other country on earth. And we need real changes. We need to do away with the militarization of local police departments. We need to do away with minimum sentencing. We need education and jobs for our young people rather than jails and incarceration.
Believe me, that gets way worse. Chuck Todd gets unintentionally ironic. At the end of it, it might be even worse than Donald Trump stuff. In fact, it is, because there's substance to what Bernie's saying, and Chuck Todd cannot keep dismissing the substance Bernie is talking about over and over. Anyway, you know how to get that. We go on for another 20 minutes about that, and you got to hear the crazy way Chuck Todd wraps up that interview. Anyway, how do you get that? You get the premium content. Also in this week's premium content, it was the 1-year anniversary of the Mike Brown killing in Ferguson and the protests. So we called our good buddy Mike from St. Louis Mike.
You know, it's just all Ferguson. Why can't people just talk about the weather like civilized human beings do, you know?
Well, Mike, I think that's where your white perspective...
It is hot as hell here. Hot as Hades. Apparently I have to teach you how to be a gentleman. That's when you talk about the weather first, when you get someone on the horn.
Oh, it's hot here too. It's
I hear that, brother. I mean, it's terrible. Yeah, we got, I got this neighbor lady. She's old. And when she gets hot, she wears this old lady summer dresses, without proper undergarments.
Yeah.
So now it's hot and steamy, and then I got to see that. She takes her walker and walks around the sprinkler like a crazy person. Like it's a million friggin' degrees out. And now I got to see this, melting old lady. You know what? I'm not a fan.
You could just not look.
Yeah, well, yeah, but then she wins in a way, right?
Plus, also coming up, the movie Straight Outta Compton debuted, and the people over at CNN questioning why do we need more security at the movie theaters that are showing this. So anyway, that happened, and they bring out another cop to say the 99.9% lie. Anyway, so all that stuff's happening in this week's premium content. How do you get it? You go to jimmydorecomedy.com. You click on Join Premium. You make your $5 a month donation, recurring donation. Hey, guess what? If you pay for the whole year at once, we give you a month free. Isn't that nice? So go over to jimmydorecomedy.com, become a premium member, and support the show and do the right thing and get access to all the premium content. And thanks to everybody who does that and helps support the show. Don't forget, we're going to be next August 28th. We're going to be at the Malibu Playhouse Theater. All right. There's links for tickets over at jimmydorecomedy.com. Tickets are very affordable. I think they're only $10. Right. Michael Schertzer put together this show with some of his young comedy friends, and I'm headlining that show. And so it'll be a fun time. See you there. We're also there's this new convention. There's a new thing called Politicon. They're trying to make a Comic-Con for politics. And the guy who's putting it together, a big Jimmy Dore Show fan, and he invited us to come do our show down there. So Frank's going to come in. We're going to fly Frank in. Mike McRae's going to come in. That's October 9th, 10th, down at the LA Convention Center right here in Los Angeles. Politicon. We'll be talking about it more as it gets nearer. So that's October 9-10. Today's show was written. That's right. It was written by Mike McRae, Frank Thomas, Frank Conniff. Frank Thomas used to be a great first baseman for the White Sox. Also, Robert Yassamur, Michael Schertzer, Mark Van Landuit, and Steph Zamorano. All the voices today performed by the one and the only, the inimitable Mike McRae, who can be found at MikeMcRae.com. Okay, that's it for this week. Until next week, this is Jimmy Dore saying, you be the best you can be, and I'll keep being me.